Hi first graders, it's Miss McKillop. I'm sitting here in my backyard with my puppy. Here she is, her name's Lucy. And I wanted to read you another one of my very favorite books. Now, this book that I wanted to read you is very special because it's a chapter book, but it has a lot of pictures in it. This book is called Little Bo. It's written by Julie Andrews Edwards, and it's illustrated by Henry Cole. Alrighty. Now, first graders, talk to someone at home about what this page is. I bet you remember. Here's some page numbers. This page is a table of contents. Talk to a grown-up about what a table of contents is. Alright, now let's get started with this book. Chapter 1, The 6 Kittens. On a cold autumn evening, when a fierce wind bent the trees and dashed russets and copper and gold leaves into the gutters, when people retired from the raw night to sit by warm fires that hissed and spat from moisture falling through their chimneys, a beautiful white cat named Saraband gave birth to 6 lovely kittens. Saraband was no ordinary cat. She was a champion Persian and had won many prizes. She lived with her owner, Mrs. Edith Edge, in a large house in the country not far from the sea. When Mrs. Edge saw the new kittens, she became hysterical. "Look at them," she cried to her butler, Mr. Withers. "They're all different." "Really, Withers, as I've said it before, I'm very unhappy about this, and you're partially to blame. Saraband is a purebred and a champion, and she should have been treated as such. If you had kept an eye on her, as I had asked you, then this unfortunate incident would never have occurred." Withers gritted his teeth, but merely said, "My apologies, ma'am." Oh, and here's the picture for that one. Can you imagine what the ladies at the Cat Association would say if they knew about this? Mrs. Edge paced the room. "Of course the kittens can't stay here. As soon as they're old enough, we'll think of some place we can send them. You can be sure the father is that miserable bounder who is always lurking around the garden." She stroked Saraband's long, silky fur. There, my precious, my beauty. We'll see to it the nasty alley cat never bothers you again. Don't you worry." Saraband wasn't at all worried. She was feeling very content. Ooh, first graders, content is a word on our feelings chart. Think about what that means, content. She thought her kittens were the prettiest in the whole world, and she knew that their father, who was indeed the infamous bounder, would be delighted and proud if he could see his new family. She told herself that as soon as her kittens were old enough, she would take them out into the garden to meet their father. It was not long before Saraband's babies began to be aware of the world around them. At first, their eyes were a sort of milky blue, but as the days passed, each little cat began to develop its own eye coloring and its own very definite personality. Saraband decided to give them each a name. She called the eldest kitten Samson. He was the biggest of the litter and the strongest, with a thick black coat of fur. Saraband told him he was going to be extremely handsome one day. "Just like your papa," she said proudly. Next came Princess. Saraband gave this kitten a grand name because she was by far the most beautiful. Like her mother, she was white and silky soft. The third kitten had a sweet, contented nature. He was black like his father, but had his mother's long fur. He ate the most of all the babies and was therefore rather fat. His mother named him simply Tubbs. Then there was Polly. She was shy and quiet, a small, plain cat with a gentle, sensitive personality. Her coloring was black and white, and 3 of her paws were white, and she had a white nose. The next to youngest kitten in the litter was a dashing young fellow, gray and thin and sleek. His mother named him Maximilian. "Because it sounds smart, and that's what you are," she told him. Saraband had difficulty naming the last kitten. It was a miracle that this little one had survived, for she was very, very tiny. At first it seemed she would never get enough to eat, for the kittens were so much stronger and pushed her out of the way at feeding time. Also, there was the danger of her being squashed, especially by Tubbs, who was so big and heavy and who liked to sleep on top of all of the others. But small as she was, the littlest kitten had a vivacious, curious nature, and was always getting into mischief. Mischief means she was getting into a lot of trouble. She had soft gray Persian fur, with white ankles and paws. On her chest was a white patch of fur that was shaped like a heart. Her eyes were a perfect violet, like the coloring you sometimes see in flowers such as pansies or forget-me-nots. This tiny creature, who almost seemed too small to be a real cat, waited for her mother to give her a name. But Saraband could only stare at her daughter and shake her head. "For the life of me, I don't know what to call you," she said. "Your eyes are too pretty, your fur is too soft, and you are so small." "For the time being, you'll just have to be my little no-name baby. We'll ask your papa to think of something appropriate when he sees you." The kittens grew rapidly. Their tails began to stand erect, and their fur, still baby soft, looked spiky and funny. Tubbs' long fur gave the illusion of him being even fatter than he really was. Samson was soon able to jump up on chairs and tables, though rather clumsily at first. Maximilian began to explore the kitchen. Often he found himself far away from his mother, and he would cry piteously until he found her again. Princess was mostly content to lie in one place and observe the others. She was lazy and rather vain. Sweet Polly was very shy. Samson was the first one to start playing. The others soon copied him, and they all loved it. They rolled and tumbled on the floor and pretended to fight with each other. They arched their backs and danced sideways and attacked any object that caught their fancy. They played hide-and-seek and pounced on each other and boxed each other's ears. And there were times when they would all go tearing after each other around and around the kitchen, slipping and sliding on the polished tiles, knocking things down and bumping into walls and doors, and having the best time. Withers was annoyed. "Miserable, ratty things," he grumbled. "Don't know why Mrs. Edge ever let them grow up. I prefer dogs." He was not kind to the kittens, and more than once he gave them a nasty shove with his boot. They soon learned to avoid him. And that is the end of the first chapter.